You ever notice how guitar players love to say, the sound is in the hands? That is until you start asking them about their pickups, and then suddenly it's a full-blown religion. But recording engineers know better. Killer tone takes more than wrist flicks and wishful thinking, and sound is in the hands is absolutely useless advice when you're trying to get a great recorded guitar sound. So if your recorded guitars sound like fried apples and your budget's lower than your bass player's GPA, here's a $244 fix that make you sound like you almost know what you're doing. Here's a dirty little secret that'll send every expert on a guitar form scrambling for their keyboard. That mythical tone that you're chasing, it has jack all to do with your $3,000 boutique lumber, your neck joint, headstock angle, or whatever snake oil bullshit you read in this month's issue of Tone Wankers Monthly. The one thing that actually matters, the one component that moves air and makes people hear your playing, is your speaker. You know, that round thing that most guitarists ignore while jerking off to 20-year-old forum posts about nitro finishes and rosewood fretboard mojo. But go ahead, mention this heresy to a Tonewood zealot and watch them spiral into a frothing meltdown faster than Vince Neil getting cut off at a buffet. But it sounds good in the room. Yeah, we know. And yet that $6,000 Les Paul still sounds like a wet fart every time you record it. I should know. I struggled for nearly 2 decades with recording guitar before I finally accepted the truth. The speaker is king. Now here's the really sad part. If you want that modern metal California cliche tone that everybody's chasing on Facebook, get ready to drop $1,600 on a guitar cab. That's $1,600 for the privilege of sounding like every other bedroom chuglord with a downtuned 7-string and zero originality. But hey, they can still write a 9-minute instrumental that absolutely nobody ever wants to listen to more than once. It's honestly amazing how hard guitar players will fight the one truth that they refuse to accept, that the thing that matters most in your recorded sound is the thing that you don't even think about. Fortunately, not everyone has their head up their ass about this. Some have figured it out. If you want to record better, you need to stop thinking like a guitar player and start thinking like an engineer. But what's the aspiring home recording engineer supposed to do if you don't have $1,600 lying around? Well, my go-to has always been the Harley Benton cabs. The vertical 2x12s absolutely rip in the studio. Sure, the forum wankers are gonna laugh at you because it says Harley Benton, but those dumbasses are too proud to admit that the name doesn't matter. The sound coming out of the speaker fucking matters! The cheapest one of those cabs I can honestly recommend is the vertical vintage 2x12. At only $359 US, it sounds great. The downside, it's loaded with metal's most overused speaker, the Celestion Vintage 30. Now, if you want to break away from the mold and try something different, it does get a bit pricey. Creambacks in that same cabinet will run you $509. Is it worth it? Hell yes it is. But is there a dirt cheap option? Actually, yeah, I can think of 2. There's the Harley Benton horizontal 2x12 that comes with Harley Benton branded speakers for $249. And I'm gonna be honest here, I have absolutely no idea if it sounds good. It's something I want to try out on another episode. But the other option is Electro Harmonix. They've got a vertical 2x12 that looks an awful lot like the Harley Benton cab. And that's because of something called OEM manufacturing. Same factory, different branding. I used to build Chrysler minivans and Volkswagen Routons on the same assembly line. And you know what the difference was? Mostly cosmetic. Here, the difference isn't quite so cosmetics, it's about what the cab is loaded with. The stock EHX version comes with a pair of 30-watt speakers that they say are a great economical replacement for Fender, etc. That's cool, but probably not what you want if you're after crushing metal tones, so that speaker's out. But wait, they've also got a 75-watt speaker that only costs $64. And they claim it sounds like a vintage Celestion. All right, now we're talking, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find that cab loaded with those speakers. I've looked, but I can't find it anywhere. But I've got an idea on how to do this on the cheap. Sure, it's not going to be boutique, but neither's your playing, so that evens out. Only $65 for a speaker? That sounds like a bargain. But is it actually any good, or am I about to get kicked in the balls again? Because let's get to be honest, I've been burned before. The PV shitfield was a lesson in pain, and those Celestion Vintage 30s from around 2010, yeah, those sounded like someone built a speaker from ice picks and said, good enough. Spoiler alert! It wasn't. To Celestion's credit, they did get better, and the recent ones are excellent at making you sound just like everyone else. But here's the even bigger question. Where the hell do we put these things? Now, a while back, somebody asked in the comments, "Hey Glenn, have you ever used a cheap subwoofer box meant for car stereos as a guitar cab?" And at first I thought they were joking, and then I thought, hold on a sec, they might actually be onto something here. Because here's the deal. Cabinet material doesn't really matter. As long as it's solid and not made from paper mache and broken dreams, it'll probably do the job. MDF, plywood, whatever. They don't really have magical tone wood properties. And if you've ever watched Jim Lill's excellent experiments, you know he came to the same conclusion. Geometry trumps materials. Now, subwoofer boxes are literally designed to give you maximum thump in the tiniest, most ridiculous spaces imaginable, like a Honda Civic trunk full of vape juice and bad decisions. So maybe, just maybe, the geometry is right. There's only one way to find out! So I went dumpster diving through the Amazon listings and found a dual 12-inch subwoofer box for only 116 bucks. Let's drop in a pair of those Electro Harmonix speakers and see if it's brilliant, or if I just made myself a very expensive fire hazard. So one thing that's kind of disappointing here is that there are no pre-drilled holes for the speakers. It's kind of a bummer, but it's not the end of the universe. So what we're gonna have to do is grab a drill here and drill pilot holes in each space here, just so we can get our screws in. I don't even have good screws right now. I've just got some, cheap 1/2-inch metal screws actually that seem to be doing the job, at least for now. I'm not looking to do a massive permanent installation at this point. I just want to kind of put this together to see if it'll actually work when we get mic'd up, see what it sounds like, see if it's actually worth pursuing or not. It's a big question mark for me at this point. I haven't even hooked up a proper jack yet. All I did was run some speaker wire down through here. I'm going to run a little 1/4-inch jack onto these two cables and just hook it up. Again, just quick and dirty for testing. And then the other question that remains is this giant ass bass port. Is it going to do any good, or is it going to make things sound too muddy? I figure if it gets really bad, I can probably stuff it with some towels or something, and that might actually stop the air from moving quite a bit. Works in bass traps. I don't see why it wouldn't block a bass port if it gets to be overwhelming. Before I put the last screw in here, I thought I'd mention something. It's real important to remember that this is MDF. This is basically glued sawdust, which means we're not drilling into very much and we're not screwing into very much. So we have to be very gentle with just how much torque we apply when we're screwing things down. It's real important we don't screw the living shit out. Can't believe I said that with a straight face. It's real important that we don't over tighten the screws. We'll just wind up stripping the wood, and then you have to twist everything, and it just becomes a real big mess. So put it until it's snug, then maybe about a 1/4 turn, and that's all you need. Again, I'm just feeling it a bit snug there, so just a little bit of a turn. That's it, and that's all you need. And screws are in place for both speakers. Now, if you're sitting there saying, I can do that way better, Glenn, chances are you probably can. I am not a woodworker. This is just a proof of concept. I want to see if this even works, if it's possible, and what it's going to sound like, because I'm just genuinely curious about this to see if we can do something really cheap. The whole idea here is to not be elegant. It is to just simply see if it's functional. Found the cheapest speakers I could, found the cheapest box I could. Yeah, let's see what happens. Unfortunately, these look a lot like one of my least favorite speakers of all time, the Celestion T75. Notice they didn't mention that part on the webpage about sounding like a vintage Celestion. They weren't actually specific about what type of speaker. Ugh. But I gotta admit, if they had put that on the website, this video probably wouldn't have happened. Now, my experience with the T75 in the studio has been both awful and terrible. Like, if you've ever wanted your guitars to sound like fingernails on a blackboard, the T75 is exactly what you're looking for. But, of course, there's a cult. There's always a cult. That's C-U-L-T, not the other thing you're thinking of, you fucking degenerate. Now, most of those T75 fanatics are actually hanging out over on the SMG Discord, and they kept telling me, Glenn, you gotta give the T75 another chance, because apparently I'm the problem, not the speaker. Truth is, they're absolutely right. Because some of my all-time favorite records that I worshipped as a teenager, were done with these damn things. Albums like Carcass Heartwork and Ozzy Osbourne, No More Tears. So clearly the issue wasn't the speaker, it was me, specifically how I was recording it. As it turns out, if you just throw an SM57 onto a T75 and call it a day, it's gonna sound like you're miking a dying lawnmower. But if you pair that 57 with a Sennheiser MD421, suddenly it's like, okay, that's actually kind of awesome. And I'm guessing a lot of those classic records used a mic combo like this back then because 421s were everywhere and nobody had 14 boutique ribbon mics laying around. So let's take that same approach with the EHX speaker and use a 57 combined with a new Sennheiser MD421 compact mic. It's the same as the original 421, but without the high pass filter that nobody ever used anyway. It takes up less space, costs $150 less, and best of all, it doesn't come with a mic clip that was designed to drop your expensive mic just by looking at it wrong. And the amp I'm going to be using here is the Tube Workshop Lulis. It's basically a 50 watt JCM 800 with balls. Okay, there's something wrong going here. The sound's kind of distant, like it's coming from the next room almost. It does sound like it's got a bit of the room sound in it, and that's not what I'm going for. It doesn't got that in-your-face punch that I'm after. Now, to be honest, I was scratching my head over this for the last few days, which is not ideal in the world of YouTube because we all know that the algorithm does not give a shit about your tone quest. It wants content, and more content, and wants it right fucking now! But then I remembered something from last summer when I was working on that Palmer 2x12 video that had a removable back. I took the back panel off and surprise, surprise, it sounded like dog shit. But you put the panel back on again and boom, completely different ballgame. Now remember how I said geometry is the most important part of a guitar cab? Well, when we seal off the port of this subwoofer box, we're literally changing the shape of the cab and trapping the air inside. And here's the part that gets the science nerd in me excited. This isn't just something you can hear, it's something that we can actually measure. Yeah, real data in a guitar video. Try finding that on your favorite Tone Bros forum post wedged between hot takes on tone wood and conspiracy theories about pick thickness. Okay, that is sounding a whole lot better. Of course, stuffing it with a towel probably isn't optimal. I'm probably gonna have to seal it off with a strip of plywood at some point, but the improvement is real. But of course, this is a show about recording, so let's get to the important part. How well does this dirt cheap contraption work in a mix? Hit it! Okay, that blew me away. For $244, that is ridiculously good tone for a metal mix. The best part of all, it doesn't sound like every other cut and paste, spikes on a line, auto-tune snooze fest out there. Now, just to be clear, this sound is the combo of both mics. The SM57 on its own, yeah, that's maybe a tiny bit fizzy. And the 421 soloed up, it gets even worse. Yeah, that's what we call ear fatigue in a box. But if you put them together, now we're cooking. What's important here isn't what you're adding, it's what you're removing. Flip the polarity on one mic and check this out. Yeah, that's the part of the guitar sound that we're removing, and we definitely don't want that in our mix. All you gotta do is set these mics up at the same distance from the speaker, blended taste, and bam, instant metal tone that works in a mix. Now, if you want that sound for your own projects, grab the free impulse response pack I made from it. I'm calling it the Imperium Tonecraft. Sounds expensive, so the forum tossers are fooled by it, but it costs you absolutely nothing. As for the cabinet itself, it's certainly not the most glamorous solution, but if you're the kind of engineer who cares more about how it sounds than how it looks, converting a subwoofer box into a guitar cab might just be the coolest way to expand your tonal palette on the cheap. Mine cost around $244 total, including the speakers, way less than buying a boutique cab off the shelf. Now, if you're just getting started, this is a great way to get legit results without draining your bank account. Just be sure to wire your speakers correctly since we're working with a pair. Remember, 2 8-ohm speakers in series equals 16 ohms. Now, I'll admit, I had my doubts about these EHX speakers, but they actually sound pretty freaking cool. In the mix, they gave me a bit of that vintage Dokken vibe without needing the $400,000 budget they had to make the album under lock and key. Great record, by the way. George Lynch was absolutely on fire on that one. So, this cabinet for studio use? Why the hell not? But what about for gigs? The first thing I'd add are a pair of protective grills because nobody wants to put their foot through a speaker when loading in. And you can grab a pair of those for about 16 bucks on Amazon. And as for handles, you can get a single strap handle that runs for around $7.50, or you can get a set of spring-loaded ones for about 10 bucks. Will this cab survive on the road? Maybe, but just don't drop it or get it wet because MDF turns to mush the moment it gets soaked. But hey, if it does fall apart, at least you'll have a cool story about the time you played gigs with a frankencab built out of leftover junk and still made it sound awesome. Crom would be proud. Yeah, this issue's month and Rosewood Fretboard down to just 116 bucks. Fuck! Box? Yeah. But to be honest, tone for a metal mux. Mux? Mux.